Angela was a simple secretary working at a local office in Illinois. Her days were uneventful, just paperwork, coffee, and endless calls. But one evening in 2007, she attended a rally where a young senator named Barack Obama was speaking. His words lit a fire in her heart. Angela felt compelled to act. She stayed late every night after work, volunteering for Obama's campaign. She organized voter drives, made calls, and even wrote letters to undecided voters. Her boss, Mr. Grant, didn't know about her late-night activities, but Angela felt unstoppable until one fateful morning. Mr. Grant called her into his office, his face cold as stone. "Angela, is it true you're working for Obama's campaign?" She hesitated but nodded. "I'm volunteering in my free time." "You're fired," he said without blinking. Angela was stunned. Fired for helping a man she believed in. She left the office that day with a box of her things, her head spinning. But the nightmare was just beginning. Word spread quickly in her small town. Angela got fired for politics. The whispers began. At first, she ignored them, but soon her friends stopped calling, and neighbors avoided her. One day, at the grocery store, a woman she'd known for years glared at her. "Traitor," the woman muttered. Angela's cheeks burned. At home, bills piled up. Without her paycheck, she struggled to make ends meet. Her landlord sent a notice: pay rent or leave. Desperate, Angela applied for jobs, but every interview ended in rejection. The worst moment came when her childhood friend Sarah confronted her. "Why did you throw your life away for Obama?" Sarah demanded. Angela couldn't explain it. She believed in change and hope, but explaining that to people who didn't care felt impossible. She sat in her dark apartment, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. One cold morning, Angela found a note slipped under her door. It read, "You should leave town before you ruin more lives." Her hands shook. She peered through the peephole but saw no one. She crumpled the note, trying to ignore it, but fear gnawed at her. That night, she heard whispers outside her window. Shadows moved in the darkness. She didn't dare look. Instead, she locked her doors and sat with a kitchen knife clutched in her hand. The next day, she went to the police. "It's just a note," the officer said dismissively. "We can't do anything." Angela felt helpless. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered hesitantly. A deep voice said, "Stay quiet or you'll regret it." Then the line went dead. She collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. She was being targeted, and she had no idea why. Finally, Angela got a job offer. It was a temp position at a local diner. She swallowed her pride and accepted. On her first day, she overheard two customers laughing about her. "That's the Obama girl," one said. "No wonder she's stuck here." Angela bit her lip and kept working, but the humiliation didn't end there. Her boss, Mr. Lewis, was harsh. "You call this cleaning?" he barked, pointing at a spotless table. Angela apologized and scrubbed it again. Every day she worked harder than anyone else, but it was never enough. Customers complained, coworkers ignored her, and Mr. Lewis criticized her constantly. When her paycheck finally came, it was smaller than expected. "Training hours are unpaid," Mr. Lewis explained with a smirk. Angela realized she was barely making enough to survive. Late one evening, Angela saw a group of protesters outside City Hall. They held signs about unfair wages and workers' rights. Something stirred in her. She joined the crowd, hoping for a sense of belonging. But when she stepped forward to speak, someone in the crowd shouted, "Isn't that the Obama girl? She doesn't belong here." The group turned on her, jeering. "You're just here for attention," someone sneered. Humiliated, Angela left. She had hoped to find allies, but instead felt more alone than ever. Angela's car broke down on a deserted road late one night. She called for a tow truck, but while she waited, a pickup truck pulled up beside her. A man leaned out. "You think you're better than us?" he said. "Why don't you go back to Obama's campaign and leave us alone?" Before she could respond, he drove off, his tires kicking up gravel. The tow truck finally arrived, but Angela couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Angela woke up to the smell of smoke. She ran outside and saw flames engulfing the dumpster near her apartment. The fire department arrived quickly, but the damage was done. A firefighter approached her. "You should be careful," he said. "This might have been intentional." Angela's heart sank. Someone was trying to send her a message. Angela's landlord visited her the next day. "You've become a problem," he said. "I want you out by the end of the month." "But I've paid my rent," she protested. "I don't care. I don't want trouble," Angela begged, but he was firm. She had nowhere to go. She turned to Sarah for help, but her friend shook her head. "I can't risk my family getting involved," Sarah said. Angela felt the sting of betrayal. Desperate, Angela reached out to a local news station. She wanted to tell her story. The reporter seemed sympathetic, but when the article came out, it painted her as a troublemaker who had brought her problems on herself. Comments online were brutal. "She deserved it," one person wrote. "Good riddance," said another. Angela regretted ever speaking out. One evening, Angela sat on a park bench, staring at the stars. A stranger approached her. "You're Angela, right?" he asked. She hesitated but nodded. "I've been following your story. I think you're brave," he said. "I want to help you." Angela didn't know if she could trust him, but something in his voice gave her hope. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of light in her darkness. Angela's struggles reached a boiling point when she found a letter in her mailbox. It had no return address, but the words on the paper sent chills down her spine. "This is your last warning. Leave town or face the consequences, ****. She looked around nervously, her hands trembling. Who was doing this to her? Why couldn't they leave her alone? Angela tried to ignore it, but paranoia set in. She avoided her usual grocery store, stopped taking walks, and triple-checked her locks every night. Even her small apartment, once a place of comfort, now felt like a trap. Desperation clawed at her. Should she leave town and start over somewhere new? But where would she go? She had no money, no family to turn to, and no allies left. That night, she sat in her apartment, the letter crumpled in her hand, tears streaming down her face. The world felt like it was closing in on her, and she didn't know how much more she could take. A loud knock startled Angela out of her thoughts. It was late, and she wasn't expecting anyone. "Who is it?" she called, her voice shaking. "It's Sarah," came the reply. Angela hesitated but opened the door. Sarah, her former best friend, stood there, looking uneasy. "I heard what's been happening," Sarah said. "I wanted to check on you." Angela's heart ached with relief, but Sarah's visit wasn't entirely comforting. As they talked, Angela sensed hesitation in her friend's words. "Why are you really here, Sarah?" Angela asked. Sarah sighed. "People are saying you brought this on yourself. They think you should have kept quiet instead of causing trouble." Angela's relief turned to anger. Even her old friend thought she was to blame. "If that's how you feel, you should leave," she said coldly. Sarah left without another word. Angela felt more alone than ever. Angela woke to the sound of shattering glass. She ran to her living room and found her window smashed. A brick lay on the floor with a note tied to it. "Get out now," her heart pounded as she called the police. When they arrived, the officer's dismissive tone was the same as before. "It's probably just some kids," he said. Angela knew better. This wasn't a prank, it was a threat. The next day, she boarded up the window, but the sense of safety she once had was gone. She barely slept, jumping at every noise. Whoever was targeting her wasn't going to stop. Angela's new job at a convenience store brought her a small sense of routine, but even there, trouble followed. One day, a customer accused her of shortchanging him. "You're a thief," he shouted, drawing the attention of everyone in the store. Angela was mortified. She checked the register and found everything in order, but the damage was done. The manager, already skeptical of her, gave her a warning. Later, Angela found her locker open and a note inside. "You don't belong here," she felt trapped. No matter where she went, someone was determined to ruin her life. Late one night, Angela's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I know who's behind this. Meet me at the old diner at midnight, ****. Angela's first instinct was fear. What if it was a trap? But her curiosity got the better of her. She arrived at the diner, her heart racing. A hooded figure sat in the corner booth. "I've been watching," the figure said. "They want you gone because you supported Obama. But it's deeper than that." Before Angela could ask more, the figure slid her an envelope and disappeared into the night. Inside were photos and documents. They hinted at a bigger conspiracy involving her former boss and local politicians. Angela's world spun. What had she stumbled into? The next morning, Angela received a call from a blocked number. "If you share what you found, you'll regret it," the voice growled. Fear gripped her, but so did determination. For the first time, she felt she had power, a way to fight back. She spent hours poring over the documents. They revealed illegal campaign contributions and shady deals tied to Mr. Grant, her former boss. Angela realized she'd been targeted not just for supporting Obama, but for unknowingly threatening a corrupt network. As Angela tried to decide what to do, the threats intensified. Her car was vandalized, her tires slashed. Strangers followed her in the streets muttering insults. Her landlord gave her an eviction notice. "I can't have this trouble here," he said. Angela packed her belongings, unsure where to go, but she clung to the envelope. It was her only weapon against the people ruining her life. Angela contacted a journalist, someone she hoped she could trust. She handed over the envelope, explaining everything. The journalist promised to investigate but warned her to be careful. "These people are dangerous," he said. Days later, the story broke. Headlines exposed the corruption in her town, linking Mr. Grant and others to illegal activities. Angela braced herself for the fallout. The backlash was swift. Federal investigators descended on the town. Mr. Grant was arrested, along with several others. Angela's name was cleared, and people began to see her as a hero. The threats stopped, and for the first time in months, she felt safe. She received calls from strangers thanking her for her bravery. Even Sarah apologized, admitting she'd been wrong. Though Angela had lost so much, she gained something priceless: her self-respect. Months later, Angela got a call from a familiar voice. It was someone from Obama's team. "We heard about what you did," the voice said. "We'd like you to join us in Washington." Angela accepted, her heart swelling with pride. She had fought through darkness and despair, but in the end, she emerged stronger than ever.